Well, hello and a very warm welcome to Business Today TV. I am Chetan Bhutani and today I'm joined by Shashank Srivastava, Senior Executive Director at Maruti Suzuki for Sales and Marketing. Thank you, Shashank-san, for joining us.
Thank you.
First question to you. Tell us about the numbers, the good, bad and ugly.
Well, the numbers were slightly below expectations, I think, of the market. The market was expecting industry to be around 300,000. It ended up finally at 294,000. And I think that's largely because of the, not so much on the demand side. The demand side seems to be robust, but because on the supply side, we still have a bit of a problem as far as the semiconductor issue that continues. So overall, yes, 294,000 for the industry, still a growth of about 2.5% over last year's 287,000. So that's a good beginning, I would say, for the month of April. Stock levels at the dealerships continue to be low in the industry. Rough estimates are around 135,000. Normally, in a normal situation, it's roughly around 280 to 300,000. So still, the pipeline seems to be a little barren at the moment. So expectedly, when the production improves, then the supply side situation constraints are removed. I would say that we can expect much better numbers going forward.
Right. Profit jumped about 57.7%, revenue up 11.3%. What do you attribute this to, the 4 or 5 price hikes that you've done, or the constant cushion that you've provided to the company?
So yes, so a couple of things, of course. One, as you rightly pointed out, the prices which we increased in the last 1.5 years, that helped a little bit because the commodity prices have gone up at much higher level. So we haven't really fully covered the increase in cost. Commodity prices still continue to be high. And that's one reason why we had affected a price increase in mid of April as well. Yes, so that helped, you rightly said. Second thing is because of the much lower inventories at the dealership, because of the supply constraint and a longer waiting list for the different models, the sales promotion expenses have been muted. And that's one other reason why you've seen the profitability a bit better. And of course, on the purely financial terms, of course, the yen weakness also helps because that reduces the cost of imports for us. So a couple of these reasons put together, but you are absolutely right. The commodity prices still continue to be high as before.
Right. As you mentioned about the price hikes and the constant cushion that they're providing, are there any more price hikes anticipated? Because I'll come to that part of supply chain later, but for a yes or no, are there more plans?
So it's very clear, it all depends on how the cost structure goes from here. And remember, in any auto OEM, in the cost structure, 75 to 78% of the cost is actually material cost. Yes. And that material cost is directly proportionate to the commodity prices. So it all really depends on how commodity prices pan out. Remember, for Maruti Suzuki, increase in price is the last option that we exercise. And we do it with great reluctance because as market leaders, we are very conscious of the fact that we don't want to compromise on the demand side. We are in that sense responsible for the demand in the industry also, and we are very conscious of this responsibility. So we really look at both the top line and the bottom line, and this is a continuous exercise. So the answer can't be a yes or a no. It could be either, but it all depends on how the cost structure unfolds from here.
Right, but don't you think that in 1 month when we last spoke, there has not been much improvement as far as the supply of the semiconductor is concerned? The raw material costs are concerned. In fact, the prices are even going higher right now. So sure. I think the price hike is imminent.
They have stabilized a little bit, I would say, but they still remain pretty high. Copper, for example, still above $10,000. You have aluminum above touching 4,000 almost. So they still remain high. Steel is pretty high still. It used to be a 38 rupees a kg about a year and a half back. Still very stubbornly still around that 75-80 range. So still the commodity prices are high. It hasn't softened as much as we thought, but they have relatively stabilized a little bit of late. But as I said, it all depends on how situation unfolds going forward.
Right. I would just come down to the domestic sales part. We've seen a dip of about 10,000 odd units for
Yes.
April.
Yeah.
But rest the numbers looks fine, but except the domestic sales part, is that a cause of concern, or are you thinking that you could probably cover it up?
Yeah, so it all depends, as I said, on the supply situation. We have 300,000 bookings pending for delivery. So any extra supplies in terms of added production would help, obviously. So that's one area we are looking at very closely. And as you know, Chetan, we need to also, we are very thankful to our customers who have been patiently waiting for our cars. And we are, we have embarked on a communication with the consumers, each and every one of them who is waiting, to thank them for their patience and also to explain to them the situation which we have been encountering, so that they understand the reason why there is a waiting situation. So we continue to do that on the customer side while we try to also as obviously improve on the supply side. I think going forward, we are looking at doing these two specific things to help the situation for our consumers.
And Shashank San, even chairman pointed out in the analyst call that the small car segment is literally shrinking, and when Maruti used to be, or probably is still the largest player in the small car segment, your mini like Alto Espresso fell by 32 odd percent, compact fell about 18 odd percent. However, Brezza, Escos, Ertiga went up about 33 odd percent.
Yeah.
So, do you think that the small car segment, the entry level car segment, the probably a achievement level for a common man's car segment is dying down?
I wouldn't say dying down, but yes, because in India, the first time buyers still about 47%. And also because of our unique demography, we are a very young nation, probably one of the youngest. Our average age is about 26, 27 years of age. So a lot of new first-time buyers who come in. And this has been remarkably true for our country for the last 20 years. The first-time buyers in that range of 47 to 50%. Since that continues, I think the potential is great. And I think that's what our chairman was pointing out, that the motorization levels in India are very small. We are just around 25 to 30 vehicles per thousand against the more developed nations who might be going up to as high as 750 per thousand. So the upside is possible. The potential is huge. It all depends on the affordability factor for the first time buyer and the lower end. And that's what he was pointing out, because of recently the prices which have gone up in percentage terms for the lower end seems to have gone up higher as compared to the other segments. And also remember, the price elasticity at the lower end of the segment of the portfolio is actually much higher. In other words, any increase in prices, the sensitivity to that increase, negative sensitivity to that increase, is much higher in the case of the entry level buyer. And that is what has been happening, and that's what he was referring to.
But Chairman was very clear, and he pointed out that the iconic comment of bread and butter, and the butter has literally wiped out. So, what is the strategy there? I know it takes time. I know Maruti never reveals what they are planning to do, any future comment, but yes, there is a need to probably have some immediate vehicles that could cater to the demand of a mini SUV or a compact SUV segment, or anything else that you must be planning to immediately get the market hold. So what's the plan out there?
Yeah, so very interesting question, Chetan, and I think it's a very important question for us as well. Our market share in the non-SUV segment, so if you remove the SUV, our non-SUV segment, our market share is 66%. Right. And this is the highest that we have had ever. And it's been increasing for the last 10 years. Actually, there's a continuous increase from about 48, 49% to 66% today. So obviously, the dominance of Maruti Suzuki in the non-SUV sector is complete. You have a 60% share in MPV, a 96% share in vans. We have almost 70% share in the hatches. We have overall passenger cars share almost 60 to 63%. So why is it that our overall market share then is about 45? And the reason for that is that our share in SUV segment is small. So as you dig deeper into why that is so, you realize that while the industry has 47 models which are in operation in SUV sector, we have only two, which is the Brezza By the way, Brezza is the market leader in the small SUV segment. That segment is quite fragmented because the number of players are huge. Sometimes there are more than one model from the same manufacturer. And S-Cross we have, which is on the other one in the mid SUV segment. So obviously, if you need to have an overall objective of reaching up to 50% market share, you need to do better in the SUV segment, because that's what is pulling us down. The non-SUV segment, our market share is 66% plus. So obviously, one straight thing is to strengthen the portfolio, and that's what we intend to do. Going forward, we will strengthen our portfolio in the SUV segment, and that's what we have indicated in all our communications with the external world.
So is the Jimny coming back first, or is it some other trim that's coming back first?
So that's a specific, as I said, a specific question on model and timelines. It's difficult for me to respond to that.
Absolutely. I was just asking on that front, but one or two last questions quickly. I understand that Maruti has its own EV plans, but I just want to take a comment. In a market leader and a very credible company, electric vehicles are catching fire these days. So what do you think needs to be done? Any comment from your end?
Yeah, so obviously we have to look at all the safety standards regarding the EV, especially it's a technology which is growing and not yet fully developed. So as a responsible OEM, we obviously would like to do all the possible tests and checks before we put it into the market. And that's what we plan to do. EVs obviously will become mainstream sometime down the line. But the only thing is that what percentage of conversion of EVs will happen of the overall market? It's not very, there seems to be no consensus on that. People say maybe 30% in 2030, but then there are other research which indicate it will be only 10%. I'm talking of passenger vehicles. Of course, the adoption rate in other segments could be, in other like two-wheeler or three-wheeler could be much higher. And also within passenger vehicles, different type of users can have different levels of adoption. For example, a fleet customer might have an earlier adoption. So while that happens, we are also looking at other technologies to reduce the emission for the ICE vehicles, which will obviously be there. Maybe about 80%, 90% will still be ICE vehicles. So you need to do something for the environment for those vehicles. And we are looking at all possible technology. CNG, as you know, is one of them, very successful one. And second, we have the strong hybrids. We have the hybrid technology also possible. So we need to look at the technology agnostic approach to the whole thing. And we remember the electricity that is produced for running EVs would ultimately, in India at least for some time, will be thermal, and that's not very clean either. So we have to look at the entire ecosystem, especially charging infrastructure as well. So that's what Maruti Suzuki is doing. We will examine all aspects of the ecosystem, and then when we are sure, because for us customer convenience is the number one priority.
Before I quickly move on to my one last more question, I would just want to ask you that this question is a bit technical. However, I think Raman San is the best person to answer this question. But what needs to be done at the battery end, sir? Because a lot of the preliminary investigations have revealed there have been reports that it's the battery and the cells that are actually being the culprit of cheap imports. So do you think it's the need of the hour to stop imports manufactured in India, or get good quality stuff, or the battery management system? What do you think is the need of the hour there?
So, as you rightly said, a little technical, so maybe it's not my forte,
Right.
not my area, but conceptually and directionally, obviously, you need to have a high quality system, safer systems, more efficient cell technology, both from the cost aspect as well as from the technical aspect. So, directionally, I can only agree with you. But how exactly it will be done, or what exactly is the current issue with the cell technology or this on the safety aspect, is something which, as you rightly said, a guy involved in technology might be a better person to answer this question.
Sir, also Tata Motors, one of the biggest competition for EVs, has already begun very aggressively venturing into EVs. They've just had their own two concept models being unveiled. By 2025, when we have the first look at the first car from the Maruti stable for EVs, don't you think it will be too late? Because Tatas would have actually been capturing a lot of market share, especially your competition in other companies like MG also is very actively pursuing it. Mahindra is also very actively pursuing it. So don't you think you might also be left behind, just like what happened in the SUV space? Same could happen in the EV space as well.
Frankly, I mean, while we study the EV market, at the moment, if you look at the last year, 21-22, the total sale of EVs are about 20,000, which is about 0.5 or 0.6% of the overall market, the overall market being close to 31 lakh vehicles. So the market remains small. But you are on the question of whether we are 2025 is too late or not, that obviously depends on what volumes are achieved. Certainly at the moment, charging infrastructure is an issue. Certainly at the moment, cost of acquisition is an issue. And therefore, it is not only a question of EV, it's not about EV market, or it's about the total market. As I explained to you, we need to do something about the emission of the ICE vehicles also, because they will still constitute a very large portion of the overall vehicle sales. For that, we have CNG, for example, or as I said, hybrids could be a good thing to have. So really, a technology agnostic approach needs to be looked at rather than specific markets. While on the front of SUVs, when you talked about SUVs being the thing, there obviously we do have to get trends right, because that is irrespective of powertrain. We are talking of the basic vehicle architecture, the external architecture, where people prefer a particular design, and for that obviously we need to be very closely studying the trends of the consumer which are changing. So that's what we are trying to do. We do hope that we will be able to participate fully across the entire portfolio of vehicles in the industry.
Has there been any update on Jimny or the market? The last we spoke, last we spoke, you were clear that yes, it's there, but the market research has been done. So I'm just asking, any development there?
Yeah, Chetan, you always ask me this question. Yes, so we do have a lot of feedback, mostly positive from consumers, and we are in the process of finalizing our plans. So as soon as we take a definitive decision on that, I'll personally call you, Chetan.
I would be the first person to write it.
You will be the first guy.
Okay, well, thank you, Shashank Sir, for joining us today, and wishing you all the best. And we really hope that the SUV segment really picks up for you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chetan. Always a pleasure.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.